Okay, so the next thing to talk about is regressions and how to keep your regression results and maybe export them into a nice looking table. This is something that I think most of you will be wanting to do at some point in STATA, to take some results and spit them into a nice table. Otherwise, you know, not sure what you're doing in STATA, but you know, maybe you're just playing around. Okay, so let's look at just a very simple regression. I think most of you guys have seen this sort of basic command before. Again, lots of options here. For example, you want to do robust standard errors, bam, right? Lots of different options there. So there's a regression. If you wanted to, for example, include a domestic foreign fixed effect or an indicator variable for domestic foreign, you could do it like this. I mean, in this case, it's a 1 or a 0, so you don't really need to do this. But this I dot tells STATA that you want to, whatever values of this variable there are, you want to make it into, you want to make it just into categorical fixed effects, right? So in other words, an indicator for each value of the variable, as opposed to just thinking of it as a continuous variable. Okay, unnecessary if you're doing, if you've got a 0 or 1, but anyway, could sometimes useful in a lot of situations. Okay, so we've got this regression. The first thing to notice is what STATA keeps from these regressions. So STATA doesn't just print out the results of the regression, it keeps a lot of information from this regression that it runs, right? It's got observations, right? If I wanted to say, hey STATA, you know, what were the observations from that last regression you ran? There it is, 74. If I want to say, hey STATA, what's the vector of coefficients from that last regression? Oops. Matrix. So I got to tell it, show me the matrix, right? So there it is, minus 238. There's our constant, right? So the point is, STATA keeps a bunch of this stuff in its memory, so you can ask STATA to pull it out of its memory, and that's what some of these commands that'll spit the results into tables, into nice tables for you. That's what they use, right? So one that I like, well, I don't use it that much, but I used to use it a lot before I built my own thing, is STAT, and it's a real easy one to use once you get the hang of it. So you do have to install it using this SSC install STAT. So it's basically like, hey STATA, go look on the internet, find me this STAT, and download it. Looks like I already got it. So let's do the simple one. We can tell STATA, using this new STAT functionality, which has a few different commands that come with it. We can say, you know, just with whatever the last regression you ran, pop that into a table for me. It's a .rtf, which you open in Word. You can also do this as like a CSV and probably some other text options. I'm just going to do it here for example. So let's see what pops up. Boom. Here we have that table, but just sort of a cleaned up version, I should say. Okay, so often you don't want to just spit out one result. You want a bunch of regressions in a table. And so you can do this with this STAT command, but you need to make sure you store each of those estimates. So all this stuff, after you run the regression, that gets written over the next time you run a regression. So you need to say, hey, remember that for real. I'm going to come back to it. And you do that by using estimates store. So this is running this regression, and then it's saying store it and call it E1. You can call it anything you want. I'm just calling it E1, for example. And then run this one. We'll add another control, call that E2. Right? And then go ahead and throw E1 and E2 into a table, right? And there's some options here. You can look at the help file for lots of detail. There's lots of things you can play around with this in terms of the options. I think I have the standard errors in there, and label has to do with throwing the dependent variable label on the top of the column, and then I've got a nice title here to throw at the top of the table. So here's what pops up. We got a nice looking table, right? Mileage. So each of these columns is a regression. Here's the coefficient for mileage in that first regression, coefficient for mileage in that second regression. Car type wasn't in the first regression, so there's a blank. We got it in the second regression. Okay, so a nice way to spit out some of your results. You could also do this for a summary statistics table with a little bit of a different syntax. So you can tell, like, the STATA people knew that this is something people like to do. So this is a new command option where it's like, okay, post the results of summarize, right? That's our other command. Post that to an estimate, and it sort of converts it to a way that it can remember. And then you say store that. I'm gonna call it S1, but that's just my random name for it. For the foreign cars, and then we'll do it again for the domestic cars. And you can see here, this is them sort of converting it to something that you're going to be saving, and then you can spit this out as a nice table here. So here's our summary statistics table saying, you know, that S0 and S1, spit it out to this Word file. And what do we want? We just want the means. Just give us the means here. So here we are. Boom. We've got the mean. I should have put a little label in here. I didn't put a label. You can always type something in later. It's like, oh, this is the foreign ones. Domestic. I forget if that's what it was or not, but so we've got a mean price, mean of price for foreign cars. We got the mean mileage for the foreign cars, et cetera, et cetera. It gives us the observations at the bottom there.